Loaded up here after all the other slides. Right. So all you're going to have to do is there's going to be when Doug introduces and hands off to you, all you have to do is come up, click once, and it'll be to your intro slide.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Nothing, huh? Okay, can everybody hear me? Good. I was waiting for Dr. Bates to sit down, but I thought that might not be considerate since he is our guest speaker today, too. So, no, welcome. I would like to welcome everybody to the 17th annual Victor McKusick lecture. It's always an exciting time for us here at Maine Health and Maine Medical Center to really have a distinguished guest in the audience and someone to really come and provide some great feedback as to what's going on not only in the world of medicine today, but also maybe sometimes looking back at our past. And I know that we'll hear a lot from Dr. Bates later on, and I'll get into that in just a few minutes. I'd like to welcome everybody. I'm Britt Cruz. I'm the Southern Region President for Maine Health, Maine Medical Center, and Maine Health, and then also the Southern Region for Maine Health. And I had my first experience last year during this time, and I realized as I gave my opening remarks that I stole, I think, 3 different speakers' remarks. And so today I'm going to actually stick to only a few, Doug, especially this is looking into Dr. Sawyer so that I don't steal any of your thunder today. But I'd like to welcome the class of 2029. Let's give them a round of applause. So unfortunately, some of us in the room have to do math as to when the 2029 and how old we will be during the 2029 graduation that you have. And it's kind of depressing in one way, but it's also extremely exciting that you will be the 20th class for the 20-year of the Maine Track program. So that's really exciting, and that just really talks about the longevity and how great of a program that we have here between Tufts University and Maine Health, Maine Medical Center. So one thing I'd like to just talk about for a few seconds here is anybody that knows me knows that I love numbers, and I'm a statistics person at heart. And Dr. Bates and Dr. Bing Yu, when you started this program and helped start this program and lead this program back in 2009, you probably didn't know that here in 2025 that we would have 479 graduates, 132 who have gone on to do residencies with Maine Medical Center and Maine Health. And then typically over 50% of the people who do residence and our physicians who do residence here stay in the state of Maine. I suspect that back then when you were thinking about this, thinking about the need for physicians in the state of Maine, you had no idea the impact that you would have. And so I want to thank you for that, because we are the recipients of that, those of us that are part of this program today. And our job is to make sure that the next 20 years are every bit as successful and even bigger than they were for the 20 years that we've seen, or the 16 years plus the 4 that this group will go through as well. So thank you for that. It's really been extraordinary. We couldn't do this without the help of many of you in the audience, the benefactors, the people who really have supported the program. That means individuals, families, we've seen corporations, we've seen family businesses. So many people contribute to this program. And without that support, we wouldn't be able to have this upcoming year, out of the 40 Maine Track students, 21 of them have partial scholarships because of your support. And I want to thank you all, and I want to give you applause for that because it really does make this program work. So then I want to go back to the class of 2029. I really don't have any great advice for you. I wish I did. I wish I could tell you to do this, do this, do this, but I can't do that. But the one thing I can tell you to do, and this has been kind of ingrained in my head, especially over the last month, is celebrate. When you do something great, celebrate it. Celebrate it with your classmates. Celebrate it as an individual. Celebrate with your families. Celebrate together when you, as a collective group, do something great. Make sure you celebrate. That's how your well-being actually does get better and will continue to be great if you're able to do that. So that's my only words of advice to you, is celebrate things and make sure that you always, have an opportunity to focus on, we did something great, we are doing great, and to continue to really think about the great things that you're going to be doing for our patients. So thank you for that. At this point, I want to hand it over to Dr. Helen Boucher, who is the Tufts University School of Medicine Dean, also the Tufts Medicine Chief Academic Officer, and she will take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Britt, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our class of 2029. It's so exciting to share the celebration with you. Before we start, I want to just highlight some of the people who actually are going to lead you through the next 4 years who are here with us today. So we have Vice Dean for Academic Affairs, Dr. Rich Freeman, Dean of Educational Affairs, Dr. Laura Bacherland, Dean of Student Affairs, Dr. Amy McKusick, our Lead of Advancement, Kristen Tommy. Who am I forgetting from the team? Why don't you guys stand and just wave so the students will see who you are? Thank you. And then we're really lucky we have 2 of our chairs. We have the chair of ophthalmology, Dr. Reza Vagafi, and the chair of urology, Dr. Jay Aswara, with us. You guys want to stand briefly? Thank you. Great. So I want to say a special thanks to Peter, and it's such my honor to follow in your footsteps as the dean and to see us here celebrating the Maine Track today. For 17 years, the collaboration between Maine Health and Tufts University School of Medicine has built a strong bridge between academic excellence and healthcare with a regional and rural focus. As we'll hear more about from Peter, the Maine Track partnership was really envisioned to address a pressing challenge, the growing shortage of physicians in Maine, especially in rural and underserved regions. That problem is only getting worse, and so students, we need you more than ever to help solve these problems. Thanks to the vision of Dr. Bates, this program has become something that transforms not just individuals, and we heard about some of those individuals, but entire communities. And we had the privilege this morning of hearing about some of those communities, and it's something that we at Tufts are extremely proud of and honored to participate in. Earlier this year, one of our graduates told us that the Maine Track gave us more than a medical education. It gave us the space to grow into the physicians we want to be without shedding the identities that brought us here. It's a great endorsement, and I hope all of you students will remember that as you go through. So today starts the beginning of your medical journey. You're going to accomplish great things, and I loved Britt's comment about celebrating. I hope you will celebrate all the great things during your 4 years and beyond. You're part of the Tufts family now and forever. We believe deeply in each of you and your talents. We believe in the choice that you made to come to Maine and to focus on access to high-quality health care for everybody in Maine and beyond. The Maine Track has addressed not only a need, it's sparked innovation, pride, and partnership. And this morning we talked about some of that innovation in ways that we're going to try to continue to make your education more and more relevant to the careers that you're going to have. It's brought students, educators, physicians, and communities together in a shared vision of education that is Maine-focused and patient-centered. And it continues to be guided by the spirit of the founders like Dr. Bates. He said, "My goal is simply to try to make a difference in the health of Maine citizens and the health care they receive." And we've seen that with each graduating class. And there has been measurable progress towards that goal in delivering high-quality care led by compassionate, highly trained physicians. And you all will understand Maine because you've lived, trained, and grown here. So I want to say thank you and congratulations to all of you in the class of 2029 and to everyone here who has made the Maine Track possible and thriving as we go further. So with that, I'd like to now turn the program over to Dr. Doug Sawyer, the Chief Academic Officer at Maine Health. Thank you.
Good morning. It's my honor and privilege to really do three things, actually. To introduce the name of the lecturer, Dr. McKusick, who inspired. The second thing is to give the students your first homework assignment. We'll come back to that. And then lead into introduction of our keynote speaker. So Dr. McKusick, for many of you may know, some may not, grew up in Maine, the son of a dairy farmer, and was inspired to pursue a career in medicine, which was unusual for him and his family. His twin brother was a lawyer in town, and I believe is the origin story for how we got to be naming this lecture after Victor McKusick, who went on in his career to be a legacy. He founded medical genetics. He went to medical school at Johns Hopkins after doing undergraduate work at Tufts. And in his career, he really inspired us to understand the human genome and how changes in the genome can be linked to disease. To this day, in fact, just yesterday, I was on the website that he created called Online Mendelian Inheritance in Man, where the Hopkins team has gone on to curate all the genes known to us and what links they have to different clinical phenotypes. So I encourage the students to pay attention to that because that's where you might find help for your homework. So we'll come back in a second. And he went on his career to really found medical genetics as a field that is still emerging as an area where we have a lot of work to do. And I'm excited that Maine Health is committed to diving deep into, under Adrian Moran's leadership, into precision medicine, which is what genomics can bring to us. We still have a long way to go. So your homework assignment is by the end of your school, before you graduate, I ask you to have a favorite gene. Now, maybe you already have a favorite. Anybody have a favorite gene already? You can change your favorite. You can, like today's favorite doesn't have to be tomorrow's favorite, but by the time you graduate, you have to have a favorite. Though I've yet to convince the curriculum committee that it is a requirement for graduation, and so even though I've been giving this assignment for 6 years that I've been in this role, it's a rare student that actually delivers on the homework. So I challenge this class to do better than all the preceding classes and come up with a favorite gene. And why? Because I think it's important to understand the fundamentals of our genetics as part of our biology, as part of our susceptibility to pathophysiology, as part of our ways in which we develop new therapies. And Victor McKusick is a legacy, and we honor him because he's like some of you from Maine and went on to a great career. So take a moment, use your phone, write it down. That's your homework assignment. But speaking of legacy, it's really an honor to have Peter Bates here as our keynote speaker. Peter, I have to say, I wouldn't be here but for Peter Bates because he actually recruited me in 2014. And I was really honored to succeed him as Chief Academic Officer as Peter went to Tufts and became interim dean prior to Dean Boucher. Peter has had a long career as a physician, critical care pulmonary medicine, and did a phenomenal job growing the clinical services in that area at Maine Medical Center, and then became a clinician leader running the Department of Medicine, becoming Chief Medical and Academic Officer, and then Chief Academic Officer prior to his shift to focusing Tufts and leading Tufts through a strategic planning process that to this day has effects on how we go about designing our curricula as well as recruiting our students. So Peter, thank you for coming and sharing with us your wisdom and the history of the program and being our keynote speaker today.
Thanks, Doug. Can you hear me all right? Good. So I want to thank Doug for that kind introduction, but don't be too impressed because a colleague this morning informed me that my sport jacket's falling apart and the lining's hanging down and back. And I've heard the first sign of dementia is you can't take care of your parents, so who knows what's going to happen. I want to also say a word of congratulations to the 2029 class. Thank you for being here and trusting us with your medical education. I'm sure each of you have had an amazing journey, and I hope in the next few days you have the opportunity to kind of reflect on that, as others have suggested, but maybe also take a minute to express some gratitude to the people that helped you get here, whether it's family or friends or teachers or someone else important in your life. I think reflecting on that, because it takes so many of us to achieve these things in our life, and you're on the start of a wonderful journey. And I also want to express my concern or reservations about being described as a visionary of the program, because this was a collective effort. In fact, I believe everything worthwhile in life is a collective effort. Steve Jobs deserves a lot of credit for Apple Computer, but if it weren't for a lot of other people, we wouldn't have those devices in our pocket. And the same is true of the Maine Track. And I know several of you here, Dr. Bob Bingyu, who was VP of Medical Education, Katie Harris, who helped us with the legislature, Joe Linder, who was Dina Whitesell's predecessor as Dean of Students, John Bancroft, Chief Pediatrics. So many people got behind a vision for this program and brought it to reality, and it wouldn't be where it is today without that. So if I can handle the clicker, you might be wondering or puzzled by the title. So I think you deserve a little bit of an explanation. And it really is this. I think all of us at some point in our lives where we're grinding away, trying to be a little bit better every day, occasionally reach a point where we have this epiphany that what we're doing might not achieve the outcome we're striving for. And it's a pretty unsettling moment because we've dedicated our lives to the processes and the way we do things, and now we discover maybe we're not getting there, we have to change course. And to me, this is a why are we here kind of moment. Takes us back to what's the importance of what we're doing, how can we accomplish it better, should we make a course correction? And for me, that's where the Maine Track story starts. So a little over 20 years ago, as Doug mentioned, I was appointed Chief of Medicine, a job I loved here at Maine Medical Center. And the CMO who hired me said basically, your predecessor did a wonderful job. He was here for 18 years. The department's in good shape. Don't mess it up. Which was sort of a backhanded compliment, but it actually gave me the opportunity to just take the time and meet with a lot of people and talk to them. What are we doing right? What's not right? And I started to get calls, and Bob Bingyu was program director and VP of medical education at the time. And we've got these somewhat desperate calls from physician practices and hospitals about recruitment. And one of them came from Bill Med, who was an internist in Norway, Maine, and member of a 4 or 5 physician group, wonderful people, very dedicated to their community, but they'd tried for many years to recruit colleagues so they could have succession, and it wasn't working. And there's a little edge to it too, like you run a residency program, what are you doing? At the same time, or about the same time, I met with a young person who came to Maine Medical Center to be a faculty member, and her story was interesting. She was from Sinclair, Maine, which is a small unincorporated town at the northern end of Maine, also known by Township 17, Range 4, if you're into the grid of Maine. And she had always aspired to be a physician. She was very intelligent, and through hard work and scholarship support and a little luck, she went to Bowdoin College, and then she attended the University of Chicago for medical school and residency in Rochester. And only because she loved the state and wanted to return was she back here practicing. She'd been offered multiple opportunities along the way. And that signaled to us, this is a phenomenon. And the other part of her story was her family members, mostly French-speaking, had lost their general practitioner, and for longitudinal care of hypertension and other things, they were going to the emergency department. So this was our why are we here kind of moment. It just doesn't make any sense. And as we talked to our colleagues in other departments, John in pediatrics, the surgery chair and so forth, they were getting the same story. And the surgery chair reminded me that in a small hospital in Maine, if you lose your general surgeon, you might not have a hospital anymore. So primary care was important, but there were other things that were maybe crucial to the survival. And we decided, like, we have to find out what's going on. So first we wanted to kind of re-examine the importance of physicians in the health of our communities. And there's a little bit too much on this slide, but it's basically a report generated every year from an entity that ranks the 50 states 1 to 50 on the health status of their communities. And at the time, Maine looked pretty good. It was 8th. But also, if you looked under the hood, there are areas like cancer deaths and mental illness. We didn't look so good. And it was known then, and it's known now, that if you look at, for example, the 10 top causes of death in this country, the rate of those is far more in rural communities than it is in urban communities. And physicians are the vector for people to receive care, whether it's prevention or treatment. That's how you access services. And if you take the country and overlap a map of physician shortage and a map of inequity in healthcare, they're almost completely overlapping. So for us, that was validation that this is not only something that's important to a small hospital, this physician shortage is important to the health of our communities. So we started on a quest, and there was a lot of conversation. Well, maybe we're not recruiting in rural areas because the compensation isn't high enough. Maybe young physicians aren't comfortable living in a rural environment or the amount of responsibility required, and I think those were all issues. But our focus was the educational journey. How does this work? This might be a little depressing to my new 2029 colleagues. So you start with 3 or 4 years as an undergraduate and then 4 years of medical school. And a little terminology here. Medical school is called undergraduate medical education. In a way, it kind of doesn't make sense, but just so you know that if we refer to that. Once you've finished medical school, you're in the phase that's known as graduate medical education, which includes residency and fellowships if you specialize. And it can be a long journey. If you're a neurosurgeon, it's 7 years in residency. And that might seem like a long time, but if somebody's going to operate on my brain at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm kind of glad they spent 7 years learning how to do that. But it also meant there's a lag time here. If we were going to do something to transform medical education in the state of Maine, it wasn't going to pay off for a while. And so the urgency to think innovatively about ways we could approach it that would accelerate that transition were actually really important. So we started to look at some data about various milestones in that journey, and the first was we wanted to look at the state of the workforce. What was the situation for the physician profile in Maine? And at the time, there wasn't really a workforce study, so the next best thing was this, which is a recruiting repository sponsored by the Maine Hospital Association. And this is a snapshot from November, I think, 2008. And I've circled the numbers I think are most relevant because the print's kind of small. But we knew there was a challenge in primary care. We have for many years and still need more primary care physicians to serve our communities. The surprise there was it wasn't just northern and western Maine, it was coastal and southern Maine too. But what really got our attention was the need for subspecialty surgeons. Not something that necessarily comes to mind. And this is validated nationally, by the way. And as a man of a certain age, a need for urologists got my attention too. And I'm really thrilled the urologist chair here is here today. Yes, sir, this is your job. But 13 urologists may not seem like a lot, but Maine had no training program in urology at the time. In fact, there was only one north of Boston, and it turned out one resident graduate a year from Dartmouth. You don't have to be good at math to figure out that's going to be a long time to fix that gap. So next we looked at graduate medical education. What was the kind of complement of residents and fellow positions in our state that serves and feeds our workforce? And this is from the Association of American Medical Colleges. The numbers themselves I don't think are really important, but you can see that Maine was well below the median, in fact in the bottom quartile of states in residency positions per capita. And at the time, outside of family medicine and 3 other centers, Maine Medical Center had the only residency programs in the state. And we didn't have programs in areas of need like urology, oncology, gastroenterology. So for those disciplines, we were kind of at the mercy of outside academic centers and an inflow of doctors to support our need. And finally, we looked at data on admissions to medical school. This is from 2008-06, from the Association of American Medical Colleges. It's a snapshot, and it compares the 3 northern New England states. And you can see across the 3 states at the time, Maine had the fewest number of residents applying to medical school and the fewest number matriculating, which basically means being enrolled. But the comparison with Vermont really got our attention. Vermont's a state with half our population and had more students in medical school. Are Vermont students smarter? I think the fact that Vermont had its own state-sponsored medical school and health sciences education complex wasn't a coincidence. And it kind of drove us, we're gonna have to do something more than we're doing now. And finally, kind of the trigger was this report from the Council on Graduate Medical Education, and I don't really expect you to read it, but basically, this is an entity that's commissioned by Congress to advise the federal government on the physician workforce. And for decades, they had been predicting a surplus of physicians in this country, and in 2004, there was sort of an oops, we think we got it wrong. We're gonna have a shortage of 85,000 by 2020, a number, by the way, that proved to be pretty close. And they recommended increasing medical school class size by 15%. And then the Association of American Medical Colleges said, we're gonna run up that. We think it should be 30% growth. And for us, the dawning notion was that if we're having a shortage of physicians today, a developing shortage nationally is only gonna hurt us and make our problem more extreme. So then the issue was how to go forward. And by now, our interest group had swelled beyond department chairs and program directors to include board members representing the community, leadership of the medical center and the health system, community hospitals. And so we hired an academic consultant to meet with them as a focus group and ask them, like, what really matters? What do you want to see if we do something like this? And this is what they told us. And I love the first one. Patients must be better off. It's all about that, right? Education and research have their own endpoints, they have their own set of regulations, they have their own financial issues, but in the end, we got to help patients be better off. We wanted to have a program that was based in Maine. We knew that people coming into medical school often had other careers before medical school and had expertise. We needed to take advantage of that. We wanted this to be authentic to Maine and really focus on rural healthcare and integrate education and research into patient care, not create a separate silo. And then the parentheses remarks are the don'ts. Don't create a separate structure that's going to be a problem. And for physicians coming to Maine from academic health centers, don't recreate bureaucracy that made us leave. So those were our marching orders. And we really set up 3 goals. The first was create a quality educational program. To us, there was no point in creating something that was going to be okay. We wanted a superior educational experience. The second was make it be authentic and based in Maine as much as possible, particularly in rural communities, so that young people can live and learn in that environment and really understand what it likes to be a provider in those settings. And lastly, make it affordable for Maine students. So we kind of had this sort of grayscale from the arrow saying MMC now, that's where we were, which was providing clerkship education. We worked with students from other medical schools. We had a deep bench of expertise. and moving to something we called strategic partnership, which is not really an official category in medical school parlance, but it indicated a desire to partner with an existing school, leverage their expertise and abilities, and if possible, accelerate the transition to offering this program. And that strategic partnership also extends to research and other important needs in academic medical centers as well as just education. So I haven't mentioned Tufts yet, but I want to now, because once in a while when you start something new, having a partner that really shares your values and your vision and supports them continuously is really important. And I think it's important to remember that there have been 4 or maybe 3.5, counting me, deans at Tufts University School of Medicine. This started with Mike Rosenblatt, it continues with Helen Boucher. There have been 3 presidents of the university, started with Larry Bacow, continues with Sunil Kumar. There's continuity in the dean's office with Amy McKusick and others, but there's also new faces in the school, and they all embrace the mission and the needs of Maine and have been incredibly supportive and helpful. And just I want to thank you, Helen, because the Maine Track wouldn't be here without you. So here's what the partnership kind of looks like, or at least it did. So the centerpiece, of course, is the student experience. And it's primarily shared, particularly from an accountability and responsibility standpoint, between Maine Medical Center and Maine Health and Tufts University. And I think everybody involved realizes that student experience, the quality of their education, that is the most important thing. But there are the other pieces to it that are also of very great importance to the state of Maine and been very beneficial. So starting on the left, patients must be better off. Well, there's several examples of this, but students have more time to spend with patients. They get to know them, they reassure them, they explain terminology, they help guide them to their clinical encounters. They're a conduit to their team for what the patient is experiencing to help them. And now, no credit to me, but the current leadership of medical education here, we know that innovations in medical education and patient care are starting to disseminate themselves throughout the health system. Patients, I believe, are better off. Community hospitals dedicate resources to support teaching on their site, but they also now have a recruiting advantage. They can offer a richer career to a young physician, and hopefully graduates of the program will settle there. The state of Maine supports scholarships, sort of paying it forward to help the Maine program move forward, but at the same time, it must be working because they're now supporting graduate medical education in a collaborative with other health centers. In the area of research, we've had young scientists here benefit from specific educational programs to advance their career and grants. The faculty have received faculty development, and in my view, faculty development is leadership development. It helps them become better members of the team. And finally, philanthropy, very important to the scholarship program, and people and organizations in our community, as I said, paying it forward. The goal really was to have these broader goals as well as just the medical student experience. And the rural experience, just an example, Stevens Memorial Hospital, the location where we got that original call from Bill Med, has become a signature site in the Maine Track, both for medical student education and for graduate medical education, thanks to Tom Guerin, who's here this morning. A really great example, and as we heard, one of the former chief medical officers called it Maine Health's Rural Academic Health Center. That's pretty amazing. And the student experience at these hospitals is a little different than the one at Maine Medical Center or Tufts Medical Center, and I don't want to get caught up in the terminology, but on the right is the experience I had in medical school as a third-year student, the year when, in my view, you really learned to become a doctor. I rotated from internal medicine to surgery to pediatrics and so forth, and the focus was around illnesses and a certain discipline in the patients who are impacted by that. But the longitudinal integrated clerkship, which we feature in the rural setting, places the student and the patient and the mentor together, and the student acquires their knowledge and skills through their experience of their own patients. And they, of course, live in those communities. And to me, this is kind of where the magic happens. This is Greg Hardy, who was an attending at Norway. And when we started the program, Greg told us, you know, I was mid-career, I was very happy, I loved Norway, I loved my work, but I was kind of wondering what else was out there. And I think when hospital leaders hear a doctor say, I'm wondering what else is out there, they start to get a little nervous because they're going to look for something else. But the Maine Track allowed Greg to become a highly recognized and regarded and awarded leader. At the same time, the student working with him got very personal instruction. Here they're doing an ultrasound, and the patient's important, but for confidentiality reasons, the picture can't really include that person. But I think the student acquires skills in a very personal way, and this person is now providing emergency medicine services in Augusta, state in Maine, and practicing. That's where it really works. So I'm near closing. I want to say a few things in gratitude, and one is to the members of our first class, the 2013 class. I've got their little pin on my lapel here. These young people, like these young people, trusted us in a very important educational event in their lives. And at the time, it was an untested program. We were confident we'd put something good together, and they trusted us, but there were hiccups along the way, and they were very helpful in just rolling with it and guiding us to make the program stronger, and I'll be forever grateful to them. Some of them are practicing in this medical center and certainly throughout the state of Maine, and they've been a tremendous asset. But I also want to thank and express gratitude to Helen and Doug and Linda and so many people who have continued to leave the program, certainly since my departure, because the program's flourishing. It's stronger than it ever was, and the growth in graduate medical education residency positions here is actually remarkable. And I think, again, getting back to patients must be better off, I think the profiling of the IPACE program, which is an integrated team-based teaching model that really came out of graduate medical education and is now spreading throughout the health system to be a model for care. As an example, patients are better off. So one final slide, and I want to digress for a story, because I think if you give a presentation like this, you always have the opportunity to speculate about the future. And I think someone said it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. And so I'm not going to follow, I think that was Yogi Berra, or at least attributed to Yogi Berra. I'm not going to make that mistake, but I do want to just say a few comments, because if you're hearing this presentation, you might think that was great, but that was a simpler time, and I'm not sure we could actually do that again today. And we're living in a really challenging time. We all may have different priority lists on what's concerning us about the future of our society or the future of healthcare in the state of Maine and our country, and we may not even agree on how we got to where we are today. But I think we probably all agree that we're at a point where sustainability of some of these major pillars we count on in our society are potentially at risk. But I'm actually optimistic, because out of the worst times, sometimes comes the best things. And one of the worst periods in my lifetime, not me personally, but in our country, was the late 1960s. And I don't know if many of you here lived through that. Not our incoming class, that's for sure. But it's a period of time of divisiveness in virtually every realm: social, economic, racial, political, and we were in the midst of an extremely unpopular and immoral war. And there was a lot of despair, like, what's going to happen? And at that time also, I want to introduce these two people on the screen. And some of you may recognize one of them or two of them, but on the left is Jack Geiger. And Jack, at the time, was a young physician, faculty member at Tufts. And on the right is John Hatch, who was a community organizer, but also a faculty member. And Jack, about this time, went to Mississippi as part of a team providing care for civil rights workers. And what he saw there shocked him. The level of poverty and disease was something he had never witnessed in his life. And as he said, what I learned in medical school didn't really prepare me for it or allow me to understand it. Jack, John, and their colleague, Count Gibson, who was the head of community medicine at Tufts, said, we're going to do something about this. It's a very dark time, but we have to do something. And so they worked with community members, and they launched the first 2 health centers in this country. One was at Columbia Point, which is in the Dorchester section of Boston, a very unique neighborhood. And the other was at Mound Bayou on the Delta of Mississippi, a very unique area. And these 2 communities shared a couple things in common: poverty, disease. And yet they were very different socially, racially, and culturally. But the results were remarkable. In a year or 2, infant mortality dropped. The incidence of infectious diseases dropped. The prevalence and severity of chronic illness dropped. And so what they started actually was, we now know as the Community Health Center movement. And 60 years later, this year, there are over 1,400 community health centers taking care of over 30 million Americans in this country. 1 in 5 Mainers gets primary care from a community health center. Now, I'm not telling you that story because I think community health centers are the answer to our challenges. In fact, they might even be at risk given the One Big Beautiful Bill. I'm not sure where that's going to go. But I'm telling you this because I think Maine still is unique and special. It's kind of like one big neighborhood. And we don't always agree, and sometimes we argue, and sometimes we get angry with each other. But when the nor'easter hits in January, everybody pitches in. And I think if a nor'easter, for external or internal reasons, is coming up the coast to us now, figuratively speaking, threatening the health of our communities and the healthcare in our communities, well, it's time for everybody to pitch in. And I'm not a leader in healthcare anymore. I'm not even a provider of healthcare anymore. I'm a citizen. But I think I and many other people are actually ready to have that kind of why are we here moment. What are we going to do about this? Maine people know the most important thing is the gifts that we give to each other. And as one of my colleagues coined during the pandemic, nobody's safe until everybody's safe. So I'm incredibly optimistic, despite the times, that we're going to find that inner resolve to come together and make a real difference going forward. But I'm not smart enough to predict that future and know what it will look like. So I want to thank you for listening. I want to congratulate our incoming class. And I want to express my gratitude to Doug, Linda, Helen, all your colleagues for making the Maine Track so special. Thank you very much.
Peter, thank you so much for that talk, especially I think those last few sentiments were incredibly meaningful. And I know that I'm not alone in this room in being so proud to be able to carry on the legacy that you and the team created together. So thank you. So for those that I have not met, my name is Dina Weitzel. I'm the Assistant Dean for Students for the Maine Track. And I have the pleasure of introducing the class, the Maine Track class of 2029. So if I can invite you all to stand, and I'll invite Dean Heyman, Dean Kulik, and Dean Boucher to help hand out your first gifts as Maine Trackers, a stethoscope. All right, so first we have Tabarak Al-Musawi. Claire Bassey. Cleo Bazakis. Hannah Bonbrest. Emma Boudreau. Alexander Burt. Callie Clifford. Calvin Coffey. Samantha Konzelman. Paige Cody. Eliza Crowley. Nicholas Dahl. Nicole DePaulo. Noah Damaris. Patrick Doyle. Elijah Dumdye. Zachary Eisenbees. Madison Fairfield. Abigail Folsom. Kira Freed. Harper Gordon. Morgan Gregory. Ian Harden. Charlotte Herson. Jessica Jensen. Benjamin Kennedy. Samuel Kwan. Ryan LaGrosse. Michael Markarian. Rosemary McCurley. Quinn Malloy. Callum Owen. Martha Paragoy. Aiden Pike. Nicholas Resnick. Alora Rice. Mia Rico. Violet Rosari. Joseph Schneer. Thomas Trundy. Thank you very much.
Well, shall we give them a hand while they're standing here and embarrass them? So before we conclude today, I'm Linda Shodron. I'm the Vice President for the Department of Medical Education. I had the great opportunity to have like 2 minutes yesterday to say hello, and we'll have more time together over time. But I wanted to add my congratulations to the Maine Track class of 2029. And as I said yesterday, we are thrilled to have you as part of our community, so welcome. I also just want to take a moment to congratulate all the family and friends and teachers and faculty who are here, who are virtual, and those who are not able to attend, because I know they are so proud of you. And it takes a village to get on this journey and stay on this journey. So sometimes I like you all to thank them as well. And so you can't clap because your hands are full, but we know that you have thanks for all of them. I also want to thank everyone who is here and who couldn't be here for their support, not just of the students, but of our faculty and our staff and this program. It is truly, without all of you, this wouldn't exist, so thank you. I'm going to ask the students to remain up here for their first photo op as a class of 2029, and I'm going to ask the rest of you to please join us and continue our celebration out in the hallway. It's not a hallway, out in the reception area to celebrate. Back to what Britt said at the very beginning, take an opportunity to celebrate on this beautiful, beautiful day and such a great event. So thank you all for being here. Don't go anywhere.